Hey there, recappers. Today we're going to take a look at the erotic thriller film Addicted. Spoilers ahead. Zoe Renard looks apprehensive as she wanders into a city building, careful to keep her sunglasses on with her head down until she's inside and out of sight. It's only once she's inside that we see why. She's headed to see the shrink, clearly embarrassed by the need to see a shrink, but her reason for being there is even more embarrassing. She explains to her therapist that her addiction started about 6 months ago, when she began to realize that all the great things that she's had in this life weren't filling the void she's felt inside of herself. And indeed, we flash back to 6 months earlier, where her story begins. Zoe's life is one of privilege and envy to most. She lives in a gorgeous house. She has a loving husband. Together, they have 2 beautiful kids that they both clearly adore. Even her job, representing up-and-coming artists, is one that she has passion for. From the outside, her life looks as if it should be the envy of most. That night, we see her and her husband make love. It's intense and passionate, and when they finish, they congratulate one another on round 2 of an epic session. But when her husband Jason falls straight asleep, she's eager for more. And this eagerness drives her to watch porn on her computer, in private, masturbating in an effort to sate her never-ending lust. So the next day at work, Zoe comes across an aspiring artist named Quentin Canosa. She looks over his work, stunned by how amazing it is. Even more so that he isn't represented by anyone yet. Her secretary pushes her to try and sign him, an idea which appeals to Zoe on many levels. That night she heads to an art show, where Quentin's pieces are on display. Immediately she's drawn to him, stunned by their beauty. Until a rude man steps in front of her and cuts her line of sight. She tries to ask him to move, but he's dismissive, even surprised that she thinks this work is any good. Well, now she's angry, telling him that if he knew anything about art, he'd know how good these pieces are. Of course, this man is Quentin, and when he reveals himself as such, Zoe's immediately embarrassed but also intrigued. Quentin's not only talented, but he's a hottie in every sense of the word. A fact only heightened by his exotic accent and charming sensibilities. She tells him that she wants to sign him. Before we go on, like the video, smash the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, or Slender Man will haunt your dreams. And he explains that he doesn't wish to speak business here. Instead, he gives her his card, so that they may chat business later. And as he does too, he makes sure to flirt with her as hard and obviously as he can. And Zoe doesn't seem to mind. So later that night, Zoe's making dinner for her husband, and we get the sense that it's a special evening. But when he doesn't come home, she calls, only to find out that he's working late. Worse is that he doesn't even realize she's waiting for him. But still, when they hang up, he makes sure to tell Zoe how much he loves her. All dressed up now, Zoe decides to go out for a change. She heads to a club and orders a drink at the bar. And as she waits, she watches a man across the way make out with a gorgeous woman. And the look on Zoe's face is one of envy and lust, clearly wishing that she was that woman. Before she can act on it though, her mother calls and asks her to pick up some ice cream at the store. Zoe hurriedly heads home. Once she gets home, Zoe showers herself off. And as she does so, her husband comes in and jumps in there with her. But it's not enough, as that night Zoe dreams of being in bed with Quentin. Now we cut back to the present. Zoe's in the therapist's office explaining all this to her shrink. She tells her that she and Jason were high school sweethearts, and that he's the only man she's ever been with. There's also a hint of something being hidden in secret in Zoe's past, and she refuses to disclose it. So on the next day, Zoe heads to Quentin's studio in the hopes of signing him. His studio's also his house, and Quentin answers the door with no shirt on. And yes, it's a good look. He leads her into the house where she tells him about her company. And Quentin's only too happy to sign with her, but there's a catch. Not only is Quentin outrageously flirty, but he asks if he can paint her. He wants to hang the painting over his bed so he can satisfy himself with the mere thought of her when she isn't around. She tries to leave, but he's behind her, whispering in her ear. She breathes for him to stop, to leave her be, but she's flustered, flushed, and soon she and Quentin are making out with passion and intensity, the likes of which she had never known. Now back at work. Zoe's distracted. Her secretary tells her of a business venture that she organized for the company, one that could net them in millions. But Zoe is barely there, seeming disinterested. Later that day, she's home showering and getting changed. But Quentin's on her mind, and soon she's picturing him all over her. Oh, she's obsessed. Can't get him out of her mind. It gets so bad that Zoe makes a good decision for once and tears up the contract Quentin signed. But she goes to the studio to drop off the torn contract anyway, and there, she bumps into his neighbor, Diamond, who seems to know who Zoe is. And on the way out, Quentin appears, wanting to know what Zoe's up to. She explains that she's made a mistake, and that they have to stop now before things get worse. Quentin, though, isn't having it. He flirts with her and convinces her to go for a drive with him, as he wants to show her something. She knows she should say no, but she can't. The something is the warehouse with graffiti on the wall. The graffiti is Quentin's, from when he was a child. The image itself is of a happy family, and Quentin explains that his mother left him when he was a boy, which drove his father to suicide. It's a touching story about loss, showing Quentin's softer, sensitive side. Again, Zoe knows she should leave it there. But before long, they're doing it on the hood of the car, and Zoe's officially addicted. Now, Zoe was supposed to be on a meeting with that business contact her secretary organized for her, but that was a lot of and Zoe's late. She gets there just in time to reschedule, but it's clear that this thing with Quentin is destroying her life. Now back at Quentin, Zoe's posing naked for him as he paints her. Soon, though, the two are on the floor making love again. She wakes up later to find herself alone. So she goes snooping around through his paintings, finding a trove of other women he's painted. Well, that makes her mad. Makes her feel cheap. And soon the two are fighting. Well, he thinks she's ridiculous because, she has a husband and has no right to be jealous. And she knows he's right. But she can't help it. She runs away in tears. And now she heads off to go see her family where things are falling apart. Her eldest son is mad because she missed another soccer game of his, and her husband can see that something's distracting her. Now the therapist tries to convince Zoe that she needs help outside of her, and she explains that she has an addiction to sex, so she needs extra help. She thinks that Jason will be supportive, that if she explains to him what's wrong, he'll understand. Zoe isn't buying that. She's scared to lose Jason, but also scared to lose what she has with Quentin. Now that night, Quentin texts her, not ready to let go of what they have. Zoe puts the phone down trying to ignore it, but Jason picks up the phone and almost sees the messages. And she uses that moment to talk with Jason about couples therapy. And Jason's not having it. He thinks they're fine and gets angry at the idea of speaking to a stranger about their personal life. So now Zoe's back at Quentin's just finishing up another session, and there's a sense that something's wrong. Where Zoe's happy to just use Quentin for sex, he's starting to develop feelings for her. He wants Zoe to leave Jason for him because he loves her. But Zoe can't do that. She can't leave her family. He's her life. She storms out, and on the way she passes that painting Quentin did of her. It's a painting of two of them entwined and in love. And he tells her he wants a family too, but with her. She leaves, and he's crying. Back at therapy, Zoe complains that Quentin changed the rules on her by falling in love. She was supposed to just use Quentin for sex, but now that feelings have become involved, she doesn't know what to do. Desperate for guilt-free, Zoe heads to a club by herself. There she spots the same man from earlier, Corey, only this time she doesn't leave. She walks right past him, dropping her panties on his lap, and soon the two are in the bathroom stall. Like there's no tomorrow. She has a serious problem, and now she knows it. So Zoe decides to find Quentin once again, only this time when she gets to his apartment, she finds him in bed with Diamond. Aw, she's mad, accusing Quentin of using her the way she's using him. He argues that this is her fault, that she's the one using him, that he put his heart out there and that she broke it. Now angry, horny, and alone, Zoe seeks comfort in the arms of someone who just wants her for and nothing more, Corey. So Zoe and Corey start more regularly. He even takes her to a club, a world that Zoe is a little too comfortable in. And after a fun night out with Corey, Zoe comes home to find Jason waiting for her. He wants to know where she's been. She said that she was working, but he knows she's lying and that she's hiding something. She denies it. and he tells her straight up that he wants his wife back because she isn't it. Now Zoe's work is also falling apart. Clients are leaving left, right, and center. Her secretary accuses her of losing it, and everyone else in the office glares at her like they know something's up. But still, there's only one thing that Zoe can think of. So she goes back to Quentin's, unable to stay away for any longer. Only this time, once they finish up, there's a knock at the door. It's a client of Quentin's, and he happens to have Jason with him. She hides, as Jason walks into the house, getting closer and closer. He takes a look at the painting of Zoe, but it's covered. Luckily, he's pulled out of the house before he can investigate further. But the walls are closing in. Made more so when Zoe gets home to find Corey there dropping off an envelope with her panties in it. Now she's frustrated with her therapist because they're getting nowhere. All questions and no answers. Her therapist is angry too, telling Zoe that she has to start taking control of her own life and stop acting like this is something you can cure easily. But Zoe, rather than doing something about it, leaves the office and runs. Finally, Zoe takes action. That night, she goes to see Quentin. He answers the door, happy to see her, only for Corey to suddenly arrive. Both men are confused, but Zoe explains that she wanted them both here so she could end it once and for all. Naturally, Corey's pissed off being dragged all the way here for this. He shouts at her while Quentin shoves him back, and Corey realizes that he doesn't need to be here. He goes to leave only for Quentin to smash a vase over his head and knock him out. Now Quentin's not going to let Zoe go so easily. He's been abandoned before, and he's not going to let it happen again. He chases her deeper into the house, ranting about how much he loves her, and how he hates to have to do this. With a knife in his hand, he's hunting her down, looking like he's going to actually kill her. And then he finds her, and she screams and turns to flee, but isn't going to make it when Jason comes out of nowhere, smashing Quentin over the head with his own artwork. Quentin collapses to the ground out cold. Should be a moment of relief, but Jason's pissed off. Apparently, Zoe left her phone behind, which is how Jason found her. Even worse, the messages on the phone are all the explanation he needs. He storms out of that house while Zoe chases him, begging for him to listen, to let her explain. But he doesn't want her to. The two of them are finished. He tells her that they're done, and he's going to keep the kids. Well, her life's over. Zoe whispers that she doesn't have a life without him or the kids, and then, when his back is turned, she steps onto the road and gets hit by a car. Zoe's life, and everyone she knows, is in tatters. Jason's broken, looking like a man who doesn't know what to do with himself. Her business closes, and those she's worked with are out of a job. Quentin's depressed on the couch, unable to function. And we flash forward 6 months as Zoe leaves the hospital. What should be a happy occasion, and indeed her children are thrilled to see her, is the opposite, as Jason drops her off at the house and then leaves. He still hasn't forgiven her. A few more months pass by, and Zoe's life is still in decline. Her best friend even stops by and tries to get her off the couch to start living again, but Zoe refuses. She can't live without Jason. Now, Zoe's mother, upon seeing all this, tries to convince Jason to forgive her. She explains that Zoe is an addict, that she didn't do what she did out of hate or pleasure, she just had no control. She gives Jason a pamphlet for Addicts Anonymous, begging him to go and check it out. So we see Zoe at a meeting for addicts. She gets up and tells everybody who she is, and what brought her here. As she opens up, we hear the door open. She looks up and smiles, unable to believe her eyes. It's Jason, who came to support her. She's breaking down in tears as she's looking at him, telling the group that she misses her husband, her friend, her support. She knows she messed up and she just wants another chance. Still in tears, she goes to him, and he goes to her. They take one another in their arms, tell each other that their love is forever, and then they kiss. Now, Zoe might be a sex addict, but with her husband there for support, she'll get through it, because their love is forever. This was a recap of the film Addicted, produced by Lionsgate and released in 2014. It stars Sharon Leal, Boris Kodjoe, and William Levy. There are a lot of morally great choices made in this movie. Do you think Jason should have stayed with Zoe in the end? Let us know in those comments with the hashtag CinemaRecap.